If one morning you woke to the soft light slipping through your window, only to realize that the memories in your mind were running backward. People who once left begin to return. Conversations rewind to their first words. Wounds close and fade from your skin. You grow younger, your hair lengthens, then shortens again until it vanishes into some distant night in the past. You know what's about to come, yet you no longer know what has already been. Would you still be you? In that moment, time no longer flows forward. Every motion in the universe, in breath, in memory, turns in reverse. It's as if the world itself has been flipped over, not falling down but rising upward. A spilled glass of water gathers itself back into the cup, a fading flame reignites, a tear that hits the ground drifts upward to your cheek. What would we see then? A new life beginning at the end, or just an old play rewound, with us as helpless spectators? Since the first time humans looked up at the sky, we've imagined time as a river, born from the distant land we call the past, flowing through the present and disappearing into the vast ocean of the future. We are born, we grow, we age along its banks, believing it only flows one way. But have you ever stopped and wondered what keeps that river from flowing backward? If every law of the universe has a mirror image, why should time be the only exception? People often say time never comes back, as if it's an undeniable truth, as if it always moves in a single direction. Yet in the silence of the cosmos, there is no real arrow pointing anywhere. There are only changes, moments following one another in a sequence we've labeled before and after. Maybe time doesn't flow at all. Maybe it's us who drift. Every moment we live is a grain of sand falling through the cosmic hourglass. Every memory, every touch, every word rests somewhere within that sand. When the hourglass is turned, none of it disappears. It simply falls the other way. Look closely and you'll see, life isn't so different. What we call the past may just be the sand below, and the future the sand above. When we flip it, the line between them dissolves. Past and future become two faces of the same motion. In such a world, memory is no longer something that has happened. It's something that is about to happen. We would remember the days yet to come and forget what we once did. Imagine a child in that reversed universe. It begins with death, a final breath, and slowly grows up into childhood. Scars fade, lessons are unlearned, faces become unfamiliar. It doesn't learn to speak, it forgets how. It doesn't search for love, it loses it. Until one day, it becomes a cry, a first cry, folding itself back into silence. If memory ran backward, we could no longer say, "I once lived," because we wouldn't know what came first. Each recollection wouldn't be the past returning, it would be the future arriving. The awareness of knowing that I remember would dissolve, because there would be no line between remembering and knowing. In this reversed flow, everything would make sense in a strangely beautiful way. The dead return, words draw back into breath, wilted flowers bloom in an instant. But life would no longer be a process, it would be an undoing. Every effort, every experience would retreat to its origin. It might look like order restored, but really it's meaning undone. There would be no before or after, only fragments of motion without anchors. When cause and effect reverse, the world becomes a film played backward. Everything still moves, but nothing has a reason. Maybe memory itself is what gives time its direction. We remember what has been, never what will be. It's memory that defines the past, the feeling of having been, that convinces us time flows forward. If memory could reverse, time would follow. In that world, recollection becomes prophecy and prediction becomes remembrance. We'd foresee sorrow before it arrives, recall events that haven't yet happened. Every dream wouldn't paint what we desire, but replay what cannot be avoided. Then memory would no longer be a mirror of what's behind us, but a lantern lighting the road ahead. A future remembered instead of awaited. But in that reversal, what would happen to the self, the one who observes? If we no longer know what comes first, how could we know where we stand in the flow? Consciousness would splinter like broken glass, reflecting us from every direction. Perhaps we'd still exist, but unaware that we do. Like a dreamer who knows they're dreaming, then forgets they were ever awake. Maybe, in that universe, no memory truly disappears. Every moment remains. Only the order is scrambled. A flower still blooms, but backward. A melody still plays, except its final note becomes the first. Everything remains beautiful, just stripped of the meaning of progress. And maybe that's what frightens us. When time stops moving forward, life loses the feeling of becoming. No more expectation, no more hope, no more regret. Everything still happens, just not in the way we know. In the quiet of night, as the clock ticks softly on the wall, we feel more than ever the fragility of the present. Each second falls like a grain of sand into the bottom of time, slow, silent, never to take the same shape again. But perhaps, in another universe, that hourglass has been turned upside down, and the grains of sand are rising, light as breath. Maybe right now, someone on the other side of time is looking back at this very moment, remembering us, the ones sitting here, wondering why time only flows one way. There is something quiet, yet absolute about the universe. Everything ages. A dry leaf falls from a branch, a cup of coffee cools on the table, a star fades somewhere in the distant dark. All of them move in the same direction, a single inevitable flow, as if guided by an invisible hand that leads everything toward its end. We call that direction the arrow of time. In the moment you take a deep breath, air flows into your lungs, then leaves, disappearing forever. You can't take back that breath, just as you can't pull back the seconds that have passed. Time doesn't allow that. It only knows one way forward, into its own past. People have wondered whether this arrow truly exists, or if it's just an illusion. But the universe answers in its own way, etched in every speck of dust, in every lingering trace of heat left over from the beginning. A steaming cup of coffee releases vapor into the air, never to return as droplets. An ice cube melts in a glass, its cold fading, blending with the warmth around it. No matter how small, each of these processes shares a single trait. They move from order to disorder. In science, we call that entropy. It's not an abstract concept, it's the heartbeat of the universe. As entropy increases, the world loses its original structure, growing more chaotic with every passing moment. The greater the chaos, the further time flows. The arrow of time points in the direction entropy chooses. No one commands it, no god decrees it. It simply happens, like an instinct of existence. A speck of dust, a wisp of smoke, even a blazing star, they all drift toward decay. In the soft, warm glow of light, it's easy to forget that everything around us is slowly falling apart. Wood darkens with age, paint peels from the walls, old photographs fade. Even memories do. They blur like the scent of perfume lingering in an empty room. But it's precisely this fading that allows us to feel time. Without decay, there would be no new or old. Without entropy, the universe would stand still. No beginning, no end. We live in a cosmos where everything moves from order to disorder, from arrangement to collapse, a journey that cannot be reversed. Sometimes we wonder what would happen if that arrow suddenly turned around. What if, instead of spreading out, everything came back together? Every speck of dust returning to its place, every crack sealed, every dead star reignited. What would such a world look like? Maybe it would be a morning where everything feels freshly made, where all traces of age vanish before we notice them. A glass falls, but doesn't shatter. It reassembles itself and floats back into your hand. Voices don't echo outward, they fold back into the throat. Raindrops rise from the ground instead of falling from the sky. It might look like order restored, but when everything runs backward, we'd realize that such a world makes no sense. Because life, as we know it, was born from chaos. The human brain doesn't function in perfect order, but in irregular rhythms, random connections that spark thoughts, memories, feelings. Consciousness itself isn't a product of order. It's a fleeting pattern held together by countless tiny fluctuations. If entropy were to decrease, chaos would vanish. The brain would fall silent. No randomness, no noise, no motion. Every thought would freeze. Without chaos, there would be no memory. Think of memory as steam rising from a cup of tea. Each memory is a fragile wisp of vapor, drifting upward, then fading away. It exists because of heat, motion, and the loss of energy. If we reverse that process, the vapor would condense, fall, and become liquid again. But in that moment, the aroma disappears, the warmth vanishes, and the experience is gone. When everything becomes perfect, living loses its meaning. The universe somehow chose the path toward chaos. It chose to grow old, not young. Everything within it, from stars and planets to the cells in our bodies, bears witness to that choice. Maybe time is simply how the universe records the journey of entropy, a diary written in dissolving energy. Each page is a moment, each line an event where balance was lost. Every breath, every thought, Every glance we share is ink on that page. If someone were to read that diary backwards, from the last page to the first, the words would still be there, but the story would lose its meaning. When night falls, we can feel the arrow of time inside ourselves. Warmth seeps out, our heartbeat slows, the mind grows dimmer. The body cools like a candle nearing its end. Yet, in that stillness, there is peace. Perhaps that's entropy's strange gift. It doesn't only bring endings, it gives us the sense of the moment, the feeling of being alive in a single, irreversible flow. If the arrow of time could reverse, that feeling would vanish. There would be no before or after, no beginning or end. Motion itself would lose direction. People say that with every breath out, we grow a little older. But in each of those breaths lies the quiet essence of life, the experience of a moment as it slips away. Time passing means we are touching it. Maybe it's because time only moves one way that we feel the weight of each second. Everything is precious precisely because it cannot return. A hug, a look, a word, they all become grains of sand falling to the bottom of the hourglass, never the same twice. And in that loss, there is a quiet kind of beauty. The beauty of something that cannot be kept, only remembered. When you look up at the night sky, the light from a star reaching your eyes may have started its journey thousands of years ago. You're not seeing the present, you're seeing the past. The whole universe, in truth, is a slow-moving film, each frame unfolding in the direction entropy has chosen. We sit in the dark, watching the images of what once was, even as we ourselves become part of a different frame for someone else in the future. The arrow of time doesn't just pierce the universe, it passes through us. We are both the characters in the story and the audience watching it unfold. Maybe that's why we can never separate time from memory. To remember is to recognize that something has passed. Memory can't exist in a motionless world. It needs fading. It needs entropy to leave its mark. Every memory, every feeling is proof that the arrow is still pointing forward. If entropy ever stopped, memory would stop breathing. No loss, no recollection, no humanity. Deep within consciousness, we know we are moving with that arrow. Wherever it leads, even if it ends in darkness, each step on this path is real. Every moment we live is proof of motion, a quiet acknowledgement that the universe is still writing its story. In silence, you can feel it. The steady tick of a clock hand sliding across the dial, one beat at a time. It doesn't rush, it doesn't hesitate, it simply moves in the only direction it knows. From one moment to the next, the arrow of time keeps flowing. And we, just tiny specks of dust, drift gently along its wind. In a quiet room, when you close your eyes and call up a memory, what's really happening inside your head? Is it like watching a film replay? A blurry image? Or just a fleeting sensation, like the warmth left on your hand after touching sunlight? We often think of memory as a tape we can rewind and watch again. But inside the human brain, there is no tape. No perfectly preserved footage, no sound stored in its original form. Only tiny electric traces, faint sparks linking together into a vast network, like stars scattered across the night sky. When we remember, the brain doesn't play things back. It rebuilds them, paints them anew from fragments of emotion, scent, image, and sound. Every act of remembering is an act of creation. No memory is ever recalled exactly the same way twice. What you're feeling is a new version of an old past. Like brewing tea from the same leaves. Same water, same steeping time, yet each cup tastes a little different. Memory changes each time you touch it. The brain doesn't store the past as images, but as connections. Each memory is a symphony of millions of notes written along neural strings. When a memory forms, neurons link up through electric signals, like thousands of threads of light weaving together into a network. But those threads aren't fixed. They tremble, fade, and reconnect in new ways. When you recall someone's face, you're not seeing them. You're activating hundreds of regions in your brain at once. Vision, emotion, language, smell. Your brain assembles them all, like a painter blending strokes into a portrait. Memory isn't something you keep, it's something you recreate. And sometimes, even the smallest detail can shift the color of a memory. An old song might make you believe the day was sunnier than it really was. A familiar perfume might convince you that you smiled when maybe you were silent. Memory isn't faithful, but it's what defines who we are. As time flows forward, the brain acts like a recording machine, taking in the present, encoding it, and storing it away. But what if time started to flow backward? Then the machine would become a clock in reverse. Instead of recording, it would begin to unravel. The connections that once preserved emotions, faces, and sounds would be undone thread by thread. Like a painting washed by rain, its colors bleeding back to where they began. Memory doesn't vanish all at once. It fades layer by layer. Images in your mind start to melt away. The story of your childhood drifts from the riverbank and dissolves between two breaths of wind. A friend's face still lingers, but their name is gone. Sounds once vivid now quiet into stillness. Yet this fading isn't painful. Strangely, it's gentle, as if the mind were being cleansed, returning to a blank sheet of paper. Imagine your mind as a still lake. Each memory is a ripple, spreading and then fading. When time flows forward, more ripples form, but when time reverses, the ripples pull inward, erasing themselves. The lake grows perfectly still. In that world, memories aren't destroyed, they're unwound. Complex feelings dissolve into simple traces. Faces blur back into skin tones and then into empty space. Each thread of memory retracts, curling inward toward its center. The fewer memories remain, the dimmer consciousness becomes. Because consciousness, the sense of I am, is woven from what we've experienced. As those threads are pulled away, we slowly vanish from ourselves. No one left to name, no inner voice, only absolute stillness, like the pause between two ticks of a clock. Science calls the loss of memory amnesia, but in a world where time flows backward, it wouldn't be a disorder. It would be a law of nature. Every memory would be dismantled in order, as if time were taking back the gifts it once gave. And maybe in that moment, there'd be no fear, only relief. Like closing a book after you finished it, knowing every word has already been understood. Still, one question lingers. If we lose every memory, does the self remain? Because the self, from the moment we're born, is woven from memory. The first face we saw, the first word we heard, the first pain we felt, the first joy we laughed through. Each fragment builds the person we are now. If each piece were taken apart, layer by layer, there would come a moment when no one remains to remember having ever been. But here's something curious. The brain can erase, but it can't help leaving a trace. When a memory is taken away, an empty space stays behind, like the faint mark left on a wall after a photo is removed from its frame. Absence becomes its own kind of evidence. In the backward flow of time, those empty spaces would grow, touch, and merge into a single glow. No distinct shapes left, only the fragile sense that you once were someone, somewhere, who saw something beautiful. Maybe, in that final moment of erasure, you wouldn't remember the name of the person you loved, but you'd still feel warmth when you thought of them. Emotion is the last thing to fade, like light retreating slowly from a sunset. When time flows forward, memory helps us find ourselves. But when time flows backward, memory leads us home, to the place before we existed. Each fragment disappears, each layer of identity dissolves, until only the original silence remains, the nameless space before consciousness, before you were you. In that state, the brain becomes a clock winding backward, no longer counting forward, but returning to its origin. No before or after, only the first heartbeat of the universe, when everything was one. Perhaps that's where time began, and where it ends. When all memories have flowed backward, we return to the first emptiness, like the very first grain of sand in an hourglass. No memory, no self, no past or future, only the pure present, still, weightless, like a first breath ever taken. Have you ever felt like you've been here before? Heard these sounds, seen this person walk by, even though you know for certain it's never happened? Just a flash, like a light flickering and fading, leaving you strangely unsettled. That feeling is called déjà vu. But what if it isn't just an illusion? What if it's a fragment of a real memory from the future? Time is supposed to flow forward, yet sometimes it feels like a single drop escapes the current and drifts the other way. Maybe, somewhere in the mind, memories don't only run backward but also forward, hinting at the strange possibility that we can remember what hasn't happened yet. Physics once proposed a delicate idea, retro-causality, backward causation. In this concept, a cause can come after its effect. Some quantum experiments suggest that tiny particles like photons or electrons might somehow respond to events that haven't occurred. A particle passes through two slits, but only chooses its path after the observer decides how to measure it. It sounds like a cosmic prank. Yet it raises a quiet question. What if the future can whisper to the past so softly that no one notices, yet just enough to make us wonder if time is truly one way? If the smallest pieces of reality can peek ahead, then inside the neural circuits built from those same particles, could traces of this phenomenon exist too? Could the brain, in some hazy instant, brush against the memory of something yet to come? Reverse memory doesn't require magic, only a universe where cause and effect aren't rigid. In such a world, the present is the meeting point of two currents, one flowing from the past, one from the future. When they collide, maybe that's when we sense the faint shimmer of recognition. I've seen this before. It's like dreaming. Inside a dream, everything seems to make sense, no matter how absurd. Only after waking does the brain rearrange the sequence, assigning before and after. But while you're dreaming, time has no direction. You might recall the ending before the story begins. You might know you're about to run before your body even moves. Dreams could be a miniature version of a universe where memory flows both ways, where the mind follows different rules, and the future seeps into the present like a thin wisp of smoke. Even when awake, cracks like these sometimes appear. A sudden impulse makes you stop just before an accident, or you say something moments before someone else does. Maybe it's just probability, or maybe it's memory running in reverse. In that case, the brain isn't predicting, it's remembering. Not the past, but another version of the timeline, like two rivers born from the same mountain flowing in opposite directions. Where they meet, the waters swirl, and in that brief turbulence, every direction blurs. We live right in that whirlpool. Science says reverse memory shouldn't exist. The brain processes information in one direction: input, analysis, storage, recall. Yet within those biological sparks, small deviations appear, mysterious disturbances in the rhythm. A tiny misfire in the neural network could activate a memory at the wrong moment. What we call intuition might be nothing more than information leakage, or perhaps the faintest signal from a nearby future. Some people claim they've dreamed of accidents days before they happened. Others recall hearing a melody only to discover it for the first time years later. In a linear world, these are coincidences. In a nonlinear one, they're memories traveling backward. No matter the explanation, the feeling carries a strange stillness. It reminds us that time may not be a straight road, but a fabric. And before or after are illusions created by our position on it. Imagine if the brain could operate along two temporal dimensions at once. Each neuron would not only record what has passed, but also reflect what's approaching. In that case, a memory from the future would feel no different from one of the past, except that it hasn't happened yet. We wouldn't be predicting. We'd simply be remembering something out of order. In truth, this sensation might be more familiar than we think. Artists often describe inspiration as something that comes to them, as if it already existed. A melody plays in a composer's mind before the first note is written. A painting appears in a painter's vision before the brush ever touches the canvas. Perhaps that's reverse memory too, their own future reaching back to speak. The world of reversed memory is quiet. It doesn't shout in prophecies or dramatic visions. It happens in silence, in the soft breath of intuition, in moments when we simply know without knowing why. You're walking down a familiar street and stop at a corner for no clear reason, just because it feels right. Maybe your mind has just brushed against a stream of memory flowing from the other side of time. A memory not yet written but already real, suspended in the haze of possibility. Maybe that's simply how life works. Because the universe, at its deepest level, doesn't distinguish before from after, only connection. Like two ends of a string, a vibration at one end moves the other. The past and the future could be two ends of that same thread. When memory trembles, it resonates both ways. In that sense, reverse memory becomes a fragile bridge between fate and freedom. If we can remember what's about to happen, could we change it? Or is the act of remembering already part of the event itself? Perhaps no one truly controls time, but we can feel the blur between its two directions, like the sky at dusk, where day and night no longer exist separately, only a fading band of light merging into itself. Reverse memory is like that. It doesn't divide future from past, but blends them into a single space, where all we can do is stay still, observe, and let it all pass through us like a gentle wind. And from here, the question deepens. If memory can flow backward, if someone could live in that direction of time, who would they be? Maybe somewhere in the universe there exist symmetric minds, beings who can see both sides of the current, yet are forced to call only one of them reality. To understand that, we must step deeper, into a place where time is no longer measured by seconds, but by the consciousness that perceives it. In the stillness of night, perhaps the only thing that reminds us we exist is memory. Fragments of who we once were, what we once felt, and the choices that shaped who we are now. Every morning, when our eyes open, the self returns, slowly, quietly, along with those old memories. Our name, our voice, the pain we've endured, the joy we've known. Together, they form a familiar melody called me. But if memory were to start running backward, what rhythm would that melody follow? Maybe it would begin to distort, like a record spinning in reverse. The sound would still be there, but twisted, inverted, the high notes becoming low, the beginning moving to the end. The self would remain, but no longer as itself. A new identity would emerge, woven from threads of reversed time. The sense of I am doesn't come from nothing. It's nourished by memory, the way fire is fed by wind. When we remember, we reinforce who we are. When we forget, that flame retreats, grows dim. Each memory is a mirror reflecting our face. Without it, we are only an undefined void. In a world where time flows forward, memories stack neatly in order, from childhood to youth to adulthood. The self evolves accordingly. We learn from mistakes, understand ourselves better, become someone new with each experience. But in a world where time flows backward, that sequence unravels. Lessons are erased before they can lead to growth. Mistakes no longer create wisdom. Instead, wisdom dissolves back into mistakes. Scars fade until pain itself seems never to have existed. It looks perfect, but it's a hollow perfection. A circle without meaning, endlessly looping, then disappearing. When we move forward through time, each step adds a new layer of memory over the old. Through that process, we change, grow, accumulate. But when time runs backward, those layers peel away, one by one. The self doesn't evolve, it disintegrates. At first, that disintegration might feel gentle, like smoke retreating into the wind. But as it deepens, it reaches the core of consciousness. One day, when every memory of self has been erased in reverse, the question, who am I, will no longer have an answer. Not because we've forgotten, but because the question itself no longer means anything. In that reversed world, I is not the one who gathers memories, but the one from whom memories depart. Each day isn't a step forward, but a layer removed, a slow unraveling of one's own being. And so, relationships transform too. In forward time, love is the meeting of two souls, building, remembering, becoming us. But in reverse time, love begins in perfect closeness and slowly fractures as memories fade. Two lovers drift apart until one day they meet again as strangers, unaware they ever belonged to each other. The sorrow of parting is replaced by the indifference of forgetting. No tears, only the quiet emptiness of having nothing left to lose. A gentle ending that chills the heart. Likewise, parents no longer teach their children. They gradually forget they ever were parents. Children grow backward, returning to infancy, and finally dissolve into the void of never having been born. Life continues, but its meaning drains away. In that world, there is no growing up. Every experience is erased before it leaves a mark. Those who once feared forget they ever overcame fear. Those who once suffered forget they ever endured. No evolution, no learning, only a static perfection, a loop where every flaw is undone. At first glance, it might seem beautiful. No mistakes, no regrets. But there would also be no reason to live, no drive to dream. Because in a reversed universe, every question already has its answer. Every act has already been undone. No hope, no despair. Just the hollow repetition of what once existed. Perhaps memory is the thread linking all our versions together. Each day, we tie another knot, defining ourselves a little more clearly. But when time reverses, that thread unravels. The knots come loose, the past selves drift apart. Eventually, the me of today shares nothing with the me of yesterday. Everything becomes fragmented, like countless copies unaware of one another. Then, the concept of I becomes an illusion. The line between present and past selves blurs. Each moment stands alone, a grain of sand in a vast desert, appearing and vanishing without trace. And perhaps, in the final instant of that reversal, consciousness realizes something profound. The self never truly existed. It was only a temporary pattern within a current flowing one way. When the current changes direction, the self changes shape, then dissolves into the ocean of eternity. This dissolution isn't tragic, it's strangely peaceful. When the self is gone, there is no boundary between me and the world. Humanity returns to perfect unity. There is no observer, only observation. No I, only pure being. Maybe that's the true nature of the universe, a boundless awareness without past or future, simply existing. The self is merely the shadow cast by forward time. When time reverses, the shadow disappears, revealing the original light. In that moment, life and death cease to be opposites. They're simply two directions of the same motion. When time moves forward, life blooms, grows, ends. When time reverses, life melts, contracts, returns to its seed. But the seed and the flower are really just two forms of the same thing, existence. We call one side birth, the other death, but to the universe, both are just a breath. So the self in reverse time is not lost. It returns to where it began, to the place without name, without memory, without the boundary between self and whole. In that stillness, all questions fade. There is no longer who am I, only I am. From here, the story takes a new turn. Time running backward doesn't just melt memories or dissolve the self. It touches something deeper, the principle of life itself. For to live is to move forward, to change endlessly. When time reverses, life slips out of its own definition, becoming a paradox of existence. In a world that flows backward, where time no longer moves forward but curls in on itself, death no longer waits at the end of the road. It's no longer a full stop. It becomes a beginning, a place where existence doesn't vanish but slowly dissolves into the river running in reverse. A person lying down doesn't end their life. They begin a backward journey. The final breath becomes the first. The slowing heart begins to beat again. Cells don't decay, they merge. Silver hair darkens, wrinkles smooth out like ripples fading from a still pond. Every trace of time is undone, leaving behind a body untouched, weightless as mist. In that world, we don't grow old, we grow young. We don't move toward loss, but drift back to a place before it ever was. Illness disappears not because it's cured, but because it never appeared. All pain, all exhaustion, all sorrow wins backward like a film playing in reverse. We still pass through each moment, only the direction has changed. There's no longer fear of the end, because the end already lies at the beginning. In forward time, death is what makes life precious. It's the boundary that gives us urgency, the wall that teaches us to cherish each breath. But in reverse, that boundary breaks. When everything returns to its primal state, when nothing is lost, nothing fades, what remains to call life? A being that cannot die can never truly be born. It simply exists, for no reason, moving toward nothing. A motion without emotion, where birth and death are just two sides of the same endless loop, repeating without crescendo or pause. That world would be still, eerily still. No cries of birth, no sighs of farewell. Every sound of life pulled inward, dissolving into absolute silence. And in that silence, maybe we'd realize that life was never a given. It isn't just a heartbeat or a breath. Life is movement toward the unknown, the ever-expanding space between what is and what could be. When time reverses, that motion stops. There's no direction left, only return. A child growing old is a symbol of experience, of accumulation. But an old person growing young, what are they becoming? Each day they lose a little more of themselves, until they return to something mindless, blank. In that world, death isn't painful anymore. It's too gentle. No feeling, just the soft fading of existence. Death reversed. But the price is that life loses its meaning. Humans have always feared death because it can't be grasped. But perhaps in a universe where death is the beginning, that fear dissolves too. No one worries about what's to come because everything has already passed. No one yearns for the future because the future is only the past unraveling. That world would fall still like a surface of water untouched by wind, every ripple of emotion erased. Joy could not exist, for there was never sorrow to oppose it. Memory would fade, for there's nothing left to remember when the past itself is unwound. Maybe in that world, people would no longer feel loneliness, not because they found one another, but because there's no one left to lose. When a child begins to die backward, they wouldn't cry, they'd smile. Not from joy, but because the nerves that once knew sadness are quietly unspooling. As people return to their original forms, they drift away from feeling itself. Joy, pain, love, all dissolve into nothingness, like smoke thinning in the air. Goodbyes would no longer break hearts. Only empty glances remain, eyes meeting without remembering why they once mattered. Promises, memories, dreams that once held us together, all pulled back into the current, undone to dust. Perhaps death in that world wouldn't be frightening, but it wouldn't be sacred either. For sacredness only exists when loss is real. Reverse death turns eternity into a burden. A being that cannot die cannot truly live. Existence without an ending is like a story that never concludes, a melody that loops its opening forever until the listener forgets it ever played. In a backward universe, perfection leads only to stillness. No birth, no death, only an endless in-between stretching toward infinity. Look closer and you'll see, it's death that gives life its meaning. It draws the boundary that makes a story whole. Without it, life is just a river without banks. Every breath, every moment becomes precious only because we know it will end. When time stops moving toward an end, meaning dissolves too. Maybe that's why the universe chose its direction. It chose decay. It chose for all things to die, for all memories to fade. Because only through disappearance can existence feel real. In a backward-flowing world where every death returns to life, we might finally understand. The most terrifying thing isn't the ending, it's the lack of one. A life that never closes can never be fully understood. Death, in its deepest sense, isn't the opposite of life. It's what allows life to be felt at all. Without death, living becomes a hollow motion, movement without purpose. Maybe the universe knew this from the very start. So instead of flowing backward, it chose to move toward entropy, toward the unraveling, the fading, the inevitable quiet. Because only in ending does beginning hold meaning. Reverse death may sound like a miracle, but perhaps it's really a reminder that every beginning is precious precisely because it will not last. That we don't need eternity to live fully, only the awareness that each moment is unrepeatable. And in the stillness of that reversed universe, if you listen closely, you might hear a faint echo, not of life, not of death, but of time speaking to itself. A distant whisper, confessing softly, existence isn't found in my direction, but in how you feel each passing second. On a quiet morning, you drop a cup of tea. The sound of shattering fills the air, porcelain scatters, and hot liquid spreads across the table. Everything seems to follow a familiar order. Actions bring consequences, causes create effects. But imagine watching this scene in reverse. The droplets of tea gather themselves, rising gracefully through the air, merging back into the cracked cup. The fractures seal as if they never existed. Your hand lifts the cup smoothly, no trace of the mistake remaining. In this reversed world, everything that has happened becomes something that never did. Words are spoken and then swallowed, footsteps appear and fade, tears dissolve into smiles that never bloomed. Every event folds back to its origin, as if the universe is drawing in a long, quiet breath. Here, causes no longer come first. Every result already exists, birthing the reason for its own creation. A wound appears, then heals, leaving behind only the faint echo of a pain that never was. Humans live within the framework of cause and effect. Since childhood, we've been taught that actions have consequences, that choices lead to outcomes. That's how we make sense of the world, how we give it meaning. But when that order is reversed, when cause follows effect, meaning dissolves with it. You no longer do something to achieve something. You simply move through a sequence of undone motions. Each movement isn't aimed at a goal, but is an unconscious attempt to unmake what's already complete. Like watching a film played backward, everything moves, yet there's no reason to believe it's alive. In that world, humans don't choose, they only undo. There's no freedom, only reversal. When you smile, it's not because you feel joy, but because joy is being pulled off your face, returned to the past. When you cry, tears don't fall, they slip back into your eyes, erasing the sadness that once was. The true terror isn't the loss of time, but the loss of continuity, the sense that one thing leads to another. In forward time, everything happens towards something, a decision, a change, a lesson. But when causality flips, every motion becomes its own retraction. There's no learning, only forgetting. No growth, only unraveling. A person falls, then stands. In our world, that's strength, resilience. But in the reversed one, they rise before they fall, returning to wholeness, never knowing they were ever hurt. Courage disappears, along with the meaning of fear. An embrace is no longer an act of love, but the retrieval of emotion. Two people once intertwined slowly drift apart until they are strangers again. Every connection unwinds, thread by thread, until only silence remains. Perhaps in that world, everything still moves, but nothing truly lives, because to live is to reach, to create, to expand. When cause and effect invert, life becomes a slow contraction. Every new thing is undone by itself, like a tree that blooms only to pull its flowers back in, returning color to petals and scent to the wind. The sight is beautiful, yes, but it's the beauty of dissolution. The beauty of a universe folding quietly into itself, graceful, silent, haunting. When cause no longer precedes effect, the idea of responsibility vanishes. No one can be held accountable because everything happens in reverse. Guilt cannot form because mistakes never occur. Forgiveness becomes meaningless, for there's nothing to forgive. Humanity would exist in a world without morality, without purpose, only the mechanical motion of reversal. Good and evil no longer stand opposed, but slide along the same continuum. Every action cancels itself. Every consequence retracts until nothing remains long enough to be real. And yet a quiet question lingers. Are we sure our world isn't, in some way, already a little reversed? Perhaps what we live is a weave of two directions, one moving forward, one retreating. In every moment, as we exhale, the universe inhales. When we step forward, maybe somewhere, an unseen version of us steps back, returning our footprints to the earth. Maybe that's why every human action leaves an echo. When we love, that feeling doesn't just exist in the present, it ripples backward, changing how we remember life. When we regret, the pain doesn't just reach into the past, it reshapes the present, alters who we are. Cause and effect, perhaps, have never been separate, but parts of a closed loop where before and after are just two breaths of the same being. In that sense, reverse causality isn't only a physical theory, it's a metaphor for how humans experience life. Sometimes we understand the cause only after we see the effect. We realize why we met someone only after they're gone. We grasp the meaning of an ordinary day only once it's lost forever. Maybe in our own way, we're already living in reverse without noticing, because the most meaningful things often reveal themselves only after they end. Every effect we call destiny may have quietly created the cause that made us who we are. A meeting, a loss, a tiny mistake. Each could be the beginning of something yet to happen, silently reshaping what we call the past. In a world where causality runs backward, time isn't a flow, but a mirror. When we look into it, we see not just the present, but the reflection of everything returning to its source. Every action, every thought has a twin unfolding in reverse at the same moment. When you smile, perhaps another version of you is slowly letting that smile go. When you hold someone's hand, maybe elsewhere those same hands are gently parting. Maybe the universe doesn't move forward at all. Maybe it simply breathes, expanding and contracting, creating and reclaiming. And we, caught in one half of that breath, call it the present, believing we're moving ahead. So when we think of reversed causality, we don't just see a paradox. We see a reflection of ourselves, small beings flowing in two directions at once, creating and undoing, existing and fading. Perhaps that's the true nature of the universe. No direction, no before, no after. Only countless moments reflecting one another, weaving the illusion of time, of action, of consequence. And from that thought, another question arises. If cause and effect can merge, could it be that our universe already contains every direction, and we're simply seeing one half of it? To find that answer, we must look beyond ourselves, beyond our fleeting lives, into the very fabric of reality, where before and after dissolve, like waves meeting in the middle of the ocean. Some nights, when we look up at the sky, we see billions of stars quietly moving across the dark. Each one, each nebula, feels like a heartbeat of time itself, so distant that its light may have begun its journey long before humans even had a word for universe. In that moment, we often think we're looking into the past, but maybe, somewhere out there, other eyes are looking back toward us, and to them, we are the past. Some physicists believe there might exist another universe, a mirror reflection of our own. Not just a copy, but a world where time flows in the opposite direction. There, everything unfolding here is closing there, like two rivers flowing away from the same spring. In the very first instant after the Big Bang, time, as we understand it, might not have chosen a single direction. Like a beam of light passing through a prism, it could have split into two symmetrical streams, each carrying its own universe. One flowed our way, into what we call the future. The other drifted backward, into what we call the past. If that's true, we're living in only half of the cosmic clock. Beyond that boundary of time, there could be a parallel world where everything runs in reverse, not just the motion of matter, but the very meaning of before and after. In that world, light might travel back to its source. Dying stars could be reborn, shattered planets might mend themselves and drift back toward their moment of creation. Life there doesn't evolve, it devolves. So gracefully that no one realizes they're folding back into nothingness. The strangest part is that if such a universe exists, it wouldn't be our opposite, but our equal. Every particle in this world could be the mirrored twin of one in the other. Like two sides of a perfect equation, they coexist to keep the whole system in balance. In this picture, time isn't a one-way stream, but an axis of symmetry, with the Big Bang at its center. Everything we call the past to the future is only half of the grand motion. On the other side, an opposite flow unfolds at the same moment, like the universe inhaling as we exhale. Imagining such a mirrored world isn't easy. In that universe, people wouldn't remember the past, they'd remember the future. They wouldn't be born and then die, but slowly grow younger, dissolve into nothing, returning to the first spark of light. For them, the Big Bang wouldn't be a beginning, but an end. If we could see them, perhaps we'd see ourselves, but reversed. When we shed tears, they'd be gathering them back into their eyes. When we say goodbye, they'd be greeting for the first time. Everything breaking apart in our world might be mending in theirs, piece by piece. In that sense, maybe nothing is ever truly lost. Every loss here is restored there. Every ending here is a beginning in reverse. The universe seems to balance itself this way. One half expanding, one half contracting, light and shadow keeping each other steady. Perhaps our very existence is the result of that symmetry. When we breathe in, another self breathes out. When we smile, another lets that smile fade. Our lives, in the end, are part of that two-way rhythm. Maybe our dreams, our déjà vu, those strange flashes of, "I've been here before," are faint echoes from that other side. A reversed version of ourselves, whispering through the thin veil of time. It's a thought both wondrous and lonely. Because if the universe is truly symmetrical, then there is no right direction, no past, no future, only two flows coexisting forever, mirroring one another. Every step forward we take is a step backward for them. Every smile here, a tear there. And yet, within that symmetry lies a strange kind of beauty, like a mirror not meant to divide, but to complete. This universe couldn't exist without its reflection, just as shadow cannot exist without light, or sound without silence. Maybe what we call time is simply the resonance between those two halves, a forward current and a returning one, merging to create the sensation of flow. Like the ocean's waves, each rising only because another is falling. In that quiet moment beneath the night sky, the starlight reaching our eyes might carry both directions of time. Part from the past, part from the reverse future, blending together across the endless void. The light we see could be the point where two universes touch, across the thinnest film of reality. From that perspective, life is no longer just ours alone, but a dialogue between worlds. Every breath, every death, every dream is a note in that twin melody. Half sound, half echo, half going, half returning. If someone truly exists on the other side, they might be looking toward us right now, wondering if we are their mirrored universe. To them, we'd be the ones moving backward, living against the grain of time. And like us, they might be asking the same question. Does the other side exist, and is someone out there remembering me across the boundary of time? When you think about it, symmetry stops being just math or physics. It becomes a feeling. A quiet sense that no matter how far things drift, how much they dissolve, there's always another half reaching back, keeping balance, keeping the cosmos from tilting too far one way. Maybe the existence of that mirrored universe is nature's way of saying nothing is ever truly gone. Everything has its reflection, not to copy, but to remember. Beauty, sorrow, life, and death, all mirrored somewhere, moving in reverse. So when a star fades away, perhaps another flares to life on the other side. When someone leaves this world, maybe they're being born in the mirrored one. When we say goodbye, maybe somewhere else, a greeting begins. In the end, the universe might just be two halves of an infinite mirror, one reflecting, one returning, together forming what we call existence. But within that mirror lies something even harder to measure: emotion. Love, longing, grief, things that follow no direction. Because if time can reverse and matter can mirror, can feelings do the same? Could it be that on the other side, where time flows backward, someone is feeling our longing, not as memory, but as a premonition of something yet to come? In a world that runs in reverse, where time rewinds toward its beginning, emotions lose their footing. Sorrow doesn't come after loss, it precedes joy. People don't cry for what's gone, but for knowing happiness is about to fade. Every feeling, born to flow with the current of time, now collides against itself, like waves crashing into one another on a motionless sea. Emotion, by its nature, depends on order. We remember because there is a past. We hope because there is a future. We love because we know one day we might lose. But when the stream runs backward, that order shatters. Memories turn into premonitions, and premonitions become memories. In this reversed flow, the heart can no longer tell where a feeling begins. Imagine someone in love in that world. Each time they look into their lover's eyes, they don't see hope. They see the farewell already waiting. Their lover's smile glows in the light of sunset, yet deep down, they know it's only the final echo before everything turns to dust. They love, not to come closer, but to prepare for parting. Love in a reversed timeline isn't a longing, but a memory played backward. Hands that just touched are already drifting apart. An embrace once full now slowly loosens. A kiss that barely began retreats, leaving emptiness where two people once stood. In that world, there are no beginnings, only endings replayed in reverse. Perhaps every emotion in the universe is simply a response to change. When things move forward, the mind reflects with feeling. But when everything retreats, that reflection distorts. Someone might laugh without knowing why, because the sadness has already passed, like rain retreating into the clouds. In this reversed world, happiness tastes bittersweet, like the fading afterglow of a dream. Every moment of joy carries the quiet awareness that it's unraveling, not passing, but being undone. Happiness becomes fragile as breath in mist, felt for an instant, then gone. Sadness, on the other hand, takes on a different role. It's no longer born from loss, but serves as a warning, a faint signal that something beautiful is slipping away. In a backward universe, perhaps everyone is born knowing joy will end, so sorrow becomes instinct. They don't cry because something's gone, but because they're about to forget. Picture a child growing up in that world, though growing up means becoming smaller. They begin life as an adult and slowly turn younger. Their emotions do the same, becoming simpler, fainter each day, until only pure innocence remains. No love, no fear, no regret. It's an emotional release, but also the fading of a soul. Emotions in reverse time are like sounds played backward on an old tape. You can still hear the melody, but every note is twisted, every echo stretched the wrong way. Something familiar lingers, but it feels uneasy, half memory, half haze. Those who live in that world move through life wrapped in a quiet stillness. When they meet, they already know they're parting. When they begin to speak, they've already said their last words. Intimacy loses its meaning because every bond is destined to dissolve. In every touch lies a silent goodbye. That's what makes the heart so tired. To feel beauty, you must believe it will last, at least for the moment you live in it. But in a reversed world, nothing truly lasts. Everything contracts, like petals drawn back into the bud. Perhaps the heart there learns to be silent. Not because it cannot love, but because it knows every emotion is only an echo of something that once was. Each heartbeat is a farewell played again. Each tear flows not downward, but backward to the eye, then disappears. When love becomes an endless goodbye, when longing is just the orbit of forgetting, people lose the ability to feel deeply. They live in reflections, where hearts beat to the rhythm of a reversed past. Life becomes smooth, emotionless. No pain, no joy, just the breeze gliding over a still lake. In that picture, emotion is no longer spontaneous energy, but regression. Love, faith, desire, all shrinking back toward their origins. Maybe that's why this reversed world grows colder, not for lack of light, but for lack of true vibration. No one hopes, no one regrets. Only silence remains. And yet, within that silence, something strange endures. When every emotion runs backward, there's one kind of memory that doesn't obey time. It isn't pulled away or erased. It lies beyond the flow, outside time itself. Perhaps we could call it the memory of the soul, where emotion simply is, free from before and after. It belongs to neither past nor future. It just exists, quietly, like the last light lingering after the candle has gone out. In that reversed world, perhaps everything grows cold, yet that memory still glows softly. It doesn't rewind, it doesn't fade. It rests deep within every living being, the silent witness to both directions of time. Maybe it's because of this that love, whether in a forward or backward universe, still means something. When the laws of physics no longer hold, when everything dissolves into reverse, that memory is the only thread connecting both sides. It gives sorrow its soul, gives happiness its taste, makes love, forward or backward, still feel alive. Maybe that's why emotion, in any direction of time, remains proof that we exist. Because even when the universe turns away, when light runs backward, when memory blurs, the heart still finds its way home. In the reversed world, people may no longer cry for partings, yet they still tremble for something they cannot name. A feeling beyond all definition. That feeling is the deepest instinct of life itself. When all emotions have melted away, when time has fully retreated, only one thing remains: the unbound memory, the only thing that can outlive the direction of time. There are memories that come to us without a clear when. They aren't tied to a year, a day, or a face. They simply appear, like breath, like a flicker of light passing through our eyes, and somehow stay with us forever. They're not memories of events, but of feelings. Of an afternoon scented with sunlight, the sound of wind in the leaves, a quiet moment that tightens the heart for no reason we can name. These memories don't live by time, nor do they die with it. They're like islands floating in a river where the water keeps moving but the land remains still. And every now and then, as we drift through life, brushing against one of those islands, we recognize it instantly, though we can't say when, or where, or why. In a universe where time could flow backward, perhaps only these memories would remain intact, because they belong to no direction at all. They don't happen, nor do they replay. They simply exist, like the smell of rain on wet earth, the shimmer of light through a drop of water, or the sound of a voice that once soothed us, even if we can no longer recall whose it was. If the cosmos reversed itself, if every motion unraveled, anything dependent on sequence would dissolve. But pure emotions, nameless impressions, would drift quietly across that boundary, untouched. They need no past to exist. They simply are. A person in such a reversed world might forget their own story, yet still feel the warmth of morning light through a window. They wouldn't know if then was before or after, only that the light made their heart tighten for a second. That feeling wouldn't be carried away by time. It would slip beyond the very idea of remembering or forgetting. In that sense, timeless memories are the final refuge of the soul. When everything else collapses, when cause and effect unravel, when the self dissolves, only those fragments remain, holding on to something still recognizably us. A scent, a sound, a glance, tiny particles of memory, smaller than moments, yet stronger than eternity. Every so often, even in ordinary life, we feel it. A strange piece of music that feels familiar though we've never heard it. A window on a street that stirs a quiet ache, as if greeting something long lost. Not a memory, but its echo. A faint shimmer that leaves behind a warmth, like candlelight trembling in a dark room. In a world where time runs backward, that feeling might be the only thing keeping consciousness intact. As everything gets pulled toward the beginning, those timeless memories remain, like pebbles resting still beneath the current. No one knows where they came from or why they exist, but they give life a faint sense of direction. Maybe the soul is woven from those fragments, not the sum of what happened, but a network of nameless feelings. A soul not measured in years, but in the intensity of the timeless memories it carries. In the reversed world, when order disappears, that soul endures. It still knows how to feel, to tremble, to soften at the sound of the wind. Perhaps that's why timeless memories are the purest form of existence. They aren't bound by cause or effect, nor pulled by entropy or the arrow of time. They neither move nor stay still. They simply resonate each time a soul touches them. Think of the moment you meet a stranger's eyes and feel somehow that you've known them before. That feeling needs no reason, no past or future. It just is. In a reversed universe where everything else is erased, such moments might be the only form of connection left. A glance repeating through infinity, reaching across the border between two directions of time. Perhaps two people who once loved each other in the forward-flowing world might cross paths again in the reversed one, no longer remembering names or reasons. They would just pause for a heartbeat, feeling something familiar stir, unaware that it is the timeless memory itself binding their souls through the fabric of reality, beyond the reach of time. In daily life, memories define who we are. But timeless memories do the opposite. They make us forget ourselves, to realize we're part of something larger, a current of pure feeling. When we recall a scent, we're no longer the observer. We become the scent itself, dissolving into air. When we hear a sound, there's no listener and thing being heard, only a single shared vibration. Maybe that's why in the deepest moments of meditation, people say time disappears, because when the mind lets go of before and after, what remains is that pure state, a timeless memory, an experience of being unbound by any story, a perfect stillness where everything is both just beginning and just ending at once. When all else fades, what do we cling to? Perhaps it's these nameless memories. They don't flow away with time. They stand quietly, like small candles in a shrinking darkness. We don't need to know when or why. It's enough to feel that faint light still burning, to know we are still here. In the reversed universe, as people forget everything, they still keep those sensations. The warmth of a hand, the sound of breathing in the dark, the smell of earth after rain. Things that need no memory, only life. Things that belong not to time, but to presence. Perhaps these memories are the anchors that hold the soul when time itself dissolves. They tell no story, and that's why they can never be lost. Even if the universe rewinds, even if entropy falls and cause and effect collapse, there will still be quiet moments like these, small islands that never sink in the endless flow. Timeless memories don't need us to remember, they only ask us to feel. Because feeling, once freed from time, becomes the closest thing to eternity. And when we touch that, even for a moment, time stops. Not because it disappears, but because it no longer matters. In that silence, it doesn't matter whether we move forward or backward. All that matters is that we are alive. When memory runs backward, emotions unwind, the body grows young again, and everything that once defined a person slowly fades away. Pieces of the self peel off like old paint on the wall of time. Names, voices, habits, even the scars inside the mind, all dissolve, bit by bit. In such a world, what remains of us? When everything that once made us who we are is stripped away, is there anything left untouched by that reverse flow? Perhaps that's what people once called a soul. Not something ethereal or glowing in the sky, but a quiet core within, untouched by any direction of time. A still center between two currents, a place where time itself cannot reach. In the forward world, the soul is seen as eternal, a bridge between humanity and what lies beyond matter. But in the reversed world, it might be the only thing left when everything else has been taken apart. When memory fades, when emotion flows backward, when the body folds back to its origin, the soul does not disappear, because it was never born to begin with. It's like light that belongs neither to the sun nor to a candle, but simply the expression of existence itself. You can't name it, because naming is already an act of time, a trace of before and after. The soul is simply presence, carrying no past, promising no future. Maybe what we call the soul isn't an entity at all, but the faint imprint left after all motion ceases, like a negative image holding the shape of the world before the light vanished. A faint mark, formless, colorless, yet still there, a proof that existence once happened. We often think of the soul as what moves on after death, but if time runs backward, death is no longer an ending, it's a return. As life folds inward and each moment retreats toward its beginning, the soul doesn't continue. It simply becomes part of stillness. No movement, no will, only pure being, undefinable, untouched. In that stillness, there's no difference between presence and absence, between someone and no one. The soul isn't the self that goes on living. It's the space into which the self dissolves, like a drop of water returning to the sea. Someone once said the soul is like a mirror. It keeps no image, only reflects. Everything passes by, seen for a moment, then gone. But the mirror itself never changes. It doesn't age. It doesn't feel joy or sorrow. Only when its surface is clouded by the dust of memory do we forget its original clarity. When time reverses, that dust is slowly wiped away. Each fading memory is a smear erased. Each lost emotion, a stain washed clean, until nothing is left to reflect but the bright emptiness itself. Maybe that's what the soul truly is, not something that exists among countless forms, but the clear space between them. In that space, we no longer know who we are, yet we feel no lack. No fear, because there's nothing to lose. No longing, because there's nothing to seek. Only a faint awareness that we still are, though we no longer know where here is. Look deep into that state, and you might see that everything, love, sorrow, death, joy, are just ripples rising and falling on the surface of a lake. The soul is neither the water nor the wave, but the quiet expanse surrounding them all. It doesn't need to remember or forget. It simply bears witness to all that ever was. Perhaps in a reversed universe, as humans lose their memories one by one, they draw closer to that state. Each backward step isn't a loss, but a release. Like rewinding a song to its beginning. The notes haven't yet played, but all of them still rest in silence, waiting to awaken. That return carries no tragedy. It isn't death or an ending, but a homecoming. To a place beyond all names, where every possibility still sleeps. The soul, if it exists, is not a destination but a midpoint, where two directions of time meet and dissolve into pale light. Or perhaps what we call the soul is only a resonance, a lingering echo after consciousness fades. When thought stops, when memory stops, when individuality ceases, there remains a fragile aftersound, like the hum that lingers after music ends. It no longer belongs to the musician, yet it still vibrates in the air for a while. And maybe the whole idea of me is nothing more than that echo, resonating endlessly across the universe among countless others. Each soul, a vibration without speaker or listener, only motion, a symphony without a player, yet so beautiful that even time must pause to listen. If the soul exists beyond the flow of time, then even reversal cannot touch it. It cannot be erased or lost, only returned to its original stillness. In that moment, we are no one, and at the same time, we are everything. No longer bound by body, memory, or thought. Maybe that is the state every living being moves toward without realizing it, to return to the nameless, where all distinctions dissolve, leaving only a quiet peace, like the universe's very first sleep. Looking back, perhaps the idea of the soul was never about what remains, but about what never leaves. Not the immortal part of a person, but the silence between the beats of time. When memory, emotion, and body all return to their beginnings, the soul is not pulled along, for it was never in the stream. It is the stillness between its currents. In that stillness, there is no sorrow, no joy, no birth, no death, only pure presence, unmoving, unchanged. Like the pause between two breaths, where for a brief instant, we can feel something beyond life itself. To understand that silence, we must step beyond reason, beyond language, beyond measure. We must enter the place where all boundaries dissolve into mist, the realm of dreams, where the soul and reality touch without words. There are nights when we dream of running through a strange street, yet somehow we know every corner of it. We see faces we've never met, but our hearts ache with a haunting nostalgia. In the dream, we die, then wake up alive again. We know things we've never learned. These impossible fragments, for reasons beyond logic, still feel completely real. Dreams don't need time to flow, they only need emotion to exist. A dream is the only place where we escape the direction of reality. In it, before and after dissolve into one another, like ink spreading through water. We don't know what came first. We don't care what comes next. Everything happens at once, in a single, endless present. When we wake, we try to piece the story back together, but it fades like smoke. Dreams leave no orderly trace, only an aftertaste, like an old scent lingering in an empty room. When we sleep, the brain disconnects from the timeline of the physical world. It's no longer bound by the rhythm of ticking clocks or the rules of cause and effect. In that stillness, memory and emotion are set free, no longer chained to before and after. The brain stitches fragments of memory into a story, not by logic, but by feeling. A fear from yesterday can blend with a memory from 10 years ago. A long-lost face can smile in a place that never existed. Perhaps in dreams, we live inside a tiny reversed universe, where memories are not governed by time, but by emotion. What makes an image appear isn't that it happened, but that it still matters. Dreams don't recreate the past. They create something new, a realm where beginnings and endings coexist. If we could observe a dreaming brain, we might see a sea of flickering lights, like stars shimmering and vanishing. There is no sequence, no starting point, only the restless dance of memory. Each time we fall asleep, maybe we're slipping through a tiny crack in time, where all directions dissolve. In dreams, we can meet those we've lost. We can say what we never got to say. We can touch moments we know will never return. In that world, separation isn't an end, just a thin veil. We pass through it like water through open hands. A dream is the only door that opens toward the reverse, where time isn't a river, but a still lake reflecting everything at once. Strangely, in dreams, we're never surprised by the impossible. We don't question why the dead stand before us, or why we're in a place we've never been. We accept it as if we've always known it to be true. Maybe that's because, in dreams, we return to our most ancient self, the part that doesn't need reasons, only existence. When we wake, everything fades, but the feeling remains. It can haunt us all day, as if we've just come back from a real place. Maybe it's a memory from the other side of time that slipped through while we drifted between two worlds. In waking life, we move forward. In dreams, we move backward. One half of the brain tries to build order, the other lets chaos speak. Every night, when we fall asleep, the two directions of time touch. Just briefly, like two rivers meeting before parting again. In that instant, we are both the dreamer and the one being dreamed. If time could truly flow in reverse, perhaps the entire universe would become a dream like that. No present, no past, no future. Only a drifting sensation, directionless. An endless dream where everything happens at once. In it, we are being born and dying at the same time. Every word, every glance, every breath repeats itself, like a melody echoing forever through space. When all memories flow backward, we no longer know where beginnings end or endings begin. A hug can be a greeting or a farewell. A tear might fall before the smile appears. Feelings merge out of sequence, rising and falling like waves in the heart. We remember and forget at the same time. Dreams are the only place where we can taste what it feels like to live in a world without time. Within them, we realize that the essence of now isn't a moment, but awareness itself. When we are aware, we exist in all moments at once. When awareness fades, we're pulled in one direction, swept away by the current of time, like a falling grain of sand. But in dreams, we don't fall, we float. No weight, no inertia. We drift among fragments of memory, unconcerned with before or after. Maybe that's why dreams feel so light, because they take us home, to the place where time hasn't yet been born. When we dream, we stand between two worlds, one dissolving, one forming. Between them lies a fog of consciousness, dense yet fragile. Each time we pass through it, we forget a little of one side. That's why, when we wake, we always feel like we've lost something, though we can't say what. A trace of that other world still clings to us, but we can't hold on to it. Maybe the universe is dreaming, too. Its dream stretches over billions of years, woven from light, particles, and energy. Every galaxy is a story, every living being a smaller dream within the great one. When time reverses, the universe is merely turning in its deep, unhurried sleep. If that's true, then what we call reality might just be one layer in an endless dream. When we wake, we don't know if we've truly awakened, or just stepped into another dream. All boundaries between real and unreal, forward and backward, melt away like mist. What remains is the simple sensation of being, alive, present, though we can't tell whose dream we're in. When we gently close our eyes, that feeling returns. The room fades, time goes silent, and consciousness begins to drift away from the shore. The dream pulls us in, not suddenly, but softly, like waves carrying us away from reality. Maybe, in that moment, we cross the doorway of the reversed universe, where memories turn to vapor, and every story ends where it began. The dream flowing backward isn't where we lose ourselves. It's where we find the deepest part of who we are. The part untouched by time, belonging to no direction, quietly watching it all unfold. Some scientists say that memories don't really belong to the past. They're just arranged that way, to make them easier for the brain to understand. But memory itself, The thing that tells us who we are, what we've lived through, doesn't flow with time. It stays still, like stones resting at the bottom of a river, while the water rushes above them. When we remember, we're not pulling something back from the past. We're simply stepping into that riverbed. Everything is still there. Emotions, images, sounds, waiting for us to touch them. Some say memories are nothing more than chemical reactions in the brain. Others believe there's something beyond biology, a separate space where every moment exists all at once. Maybe both are true. The human brain doesn't store memories like a film reel running in order, but like a three-dimensional map where each region holds fragments of experience. When an emotion is triggered, the map lights up in many places at once. The smell of wet grass can open a door to 10 years ago. The sound of footsteps on stairs can bring you back to an old house. Memory doesn't need time to unlock itself, only the right signal at the right frequency. That feeling is like wandering through a maze of light. Each turn doesn't lead to before or after, but to a place. The place where a memory lives. In the moment we remember, we don't just see it, we live it again, as if it were happening right now. The brain doesn't draw a clear line between what once happened and what is happening, because to it, both ignite the same network. In other words, the past isn't behind us. It's woven into the present. Someone once asked, could the future already exist, the same way memory does? If the past is just one point on the map, then maybe the future is too. Perhaps time isn't a river, but a plain, where all events coexist and we simply move across it, snap in the direction our consciousness calls forward. But in a reversed universe, that direction changes. We travel the same map, just along a different path. Picture yourself sitting in a familiar room, watching dust dance in the late afternoon light. That moment isn't just the present. It could be connected to countless others, another afternoon from childhood, or one that hasn't happened yet. These points are linked by feeling, not by time. When we feel something deeply enough, the border between has been and not yet begins to fade. All that's left is the sense of being. Maybe the brain doesn't need time to remember, only form. Each memory is a shape within an inner space. When we recall something, we move through those shapes, not in sequence, but by connection. So when time reverses, memories aren't lost. They simply shift position, like stars orbiting one another without ever disappearing. Sometimes we remember without knowing what we're remembering. A nameless sadness, a warmth without cause. These are unshaped memories, points on the map left unmarked. They still exist. They just don't need names. Perhaps the soul is the part of us that knows these memories, the part that doesn't need time to understand, only existence to feel. There are people who, after an accident, forget their past, yet still remember how to play the piano, how to draw, how to hold someone close. The memory of events is gone, but the memory of emotion and motion remains, as if the brain holds layered spaces, one fractured, another intact. If time is just the path we take through those layers, then losing memory doesn't mean it's gone forever, only that we're standing in the wrong place on the map. Thinking about this, death feels a little lighter. Maybe when the body dissolves, the memories remain, unmoved, at returning to their still positions on the cosmic map. They don't belong to before or after, but simply are, resting in the deep space of existence. Someone once said, memory is how the universe remembers itself. Every creature, every particle of dust is a tiny piece of that remembering. When we recall someone, it isn't just our mind at work. It's the universe itself adjusting, pulling 2 points on its map closer together. So when we say, I miss you, what we might really mean is, I'm moving through the space of memory. In a reversed world, where time flows backward, memory might be the only thing that doesn't change direction. It isn't pulled or erased. It simply glows quietly in its place, like bright islands in a dark ocean. Even if the waves shift, the islands remain. We just have to learn how to see them. When we understand memory this way, we realize that nothing is ever truly lost. Every joy, every sorrow, every glance is recorded somewhere, not in time, but in a spiritual space we haven't yet learned to perceive. Perhaps in dreams, in meditation, or in the moments before we leave this life, that map opens a little, letting us walk down the paths we never took, to meet the people we never said goodbye to. If memory is space, then time is simply how we move through it. And emotion, that's the compass. It points us toward what matters most, whether we're moving forward or back. Maybe that's why in dreams we see what's long gone, or what's yet to come. Because on the map of memory, there's no border between the two, only distance between points of light. When one of them flares, we're there instantly. No time, no travel. Perhaps memory isn't something we carry, but something we live inside of. It's the field, the background, the medium our consciousness drifts through. And we're just travelers within it, searching for ourselves through scattered images and echoes. If one day time truly runs backward, maybe we'll still find ourselves on that same map, with the same memories, the same feelings. Only now we're seeing them from the other side of the light. And maybe then we'll understand, every path we've ever walked, forward or backward, leads to the same place, the place where memory needs no time, only existence. Someone once said that time is just the universe's way of keeping everything from happening all at once. It sounds funny, but there's a strange truth to it. Because when you look closely, time isn't really a flow. It's a feeling we created to make sense of a world that never stops changing. We say now, tomorrow, yesterday, as if they were separate pieces of a puzzle. But in the language of physics, those boundaries don't actually exist. Every moment coexists, quietly, like still frames in an unmoving film reel. What moves isn't time itself, but the eye watching it. As we live, we're simply passing through each frame slowly enough to feel a flow. Einstein once wrote in a letter to a friend, "The distinction between past, present, and future is only an illusion, though a persistent one." In relativity, time isn't separate from space. They merge into a four-dimensional fabric where every event already is, waiting to be seen from a different angle. When we say time passes, maybe it's really our mind moving across the still surface of reality. Like someone walking through a misty field, watching dew sparkle under sunlight and believing it's changing, when in truth, only the light shifts. The field remains the same. Only the observer moves. In the quantum world, even the ideas of before and after start to blur. Particles are so small that the boundary between present and future becomes almost meaningless. Experiments suggest that observing a particle can affect its state, even alter what we call its past. The line between cause and effect wavers, and time begins to feel soft, like water, bending to the awareness of whoever's watching. If time doesn't exist the way we think it does, then maybe every moment of our lives already exists too. It's just that we're standing in one particular place, looking at it from one particular angle. Our childhood still exists. The day we grew up, the times we laughed, the nights we cried, none of them are gone. They're all still there, sitting quietly somewhere in the vast structure of the universe. It's like reading a book. Every chapter is already printed. None of them hasn't happened yet. We just haven't turned the page. Each story waits there, ready for us to touch. What we call time might simply be the act of turning those pages. When we reach the last one, we call it the end. But the book remains, whole and still. If that's true, then all our races against time, every fear of being too late or out of time, start to look a little strange. Because nothing is really lost. Nothing is really coming. Everything simply is, right where it belongs, in a stillness we haven't yet learned to see. Maybe that's why we sometimes feel a strange kind of longing, like missing something that hasn't happened yet, or a place we've never been. Seen this way, time reversal isn't a paradox at all. It's just a shift in perspective. We stay in the same universe, only retelling our story in a different order. Like watching an old film played backward, every scene is still there, only the emotions feel unfamiliar. A smile becomes a sign of farewell, an embrace turns into goodbye. Yet none of those moments are lost. They've only changed their place in the story. If time is just a way of organizing memory, then to reverse time is simply to rearrange the structure of that story. We don't actually travel to the past, we just reread the pages in a different tone. Maybe slower, softer, wiser, like listening to an old song. The melody hasn't changed, but we have. And because we've changed, the song carries a new meaning. Maybe time doesn't really fade things away. It only lets us hear the same symphony from different seats in the cosmic concert hall. From that view, the fear of time passing becomes lighter. We don't lose our youth, we just move to another page. Our youth stays where it always was, glowing, laughing, existing. Perhaps, sometimes in dreams, we simply wander across another version of ourselves, living in a different slice of that still timeline. Some physicists call this the block universe, where all of time is compressed into a single, transparent gem, holding every glimmer of the past and future within it. Our consciousness is just the ray of light passing through that gem, creating the illusion of motion, of progress, of change. But beneath it all, everything is perfectly still. The feeling of flow is just an illusion seen through the surface of water. Deep down, nothing moves. And maybe realizing that can ease the fear of endings. Because if everything exists all at once, then nothing truly disappears. Only our point of view shifts. Death, in that sense, isn't a door closing, but a step into another part of the same universe, where the light shines from the other side. The story we tell about time, then, is really the story we tell about ourselves. When we think we're living in a flow, we're actually arranging the order of our own memories, inventing causes and effects to understand why we exist. But if we drop that order, we might see that we were never truly separate from the whole. Every moment of who we are exists there, together, in the same place, in a space where time is just a thin veil laid over everything, to make it easier to understand. And maybe when all memories finally merge, when there's no before or after, we'll realize that the entire story of our life is just one endless breath, flowing through the vastness of the universe, beginning and ending in the same place. Ourselves. Maybe we've never truly lived in time, only told its story. Each day, we open our eyes, watch events drift by, and believe they are real, that we're somehow moving forward. But maybe we're simply reading a vast diary, one that's already been written, every word and punctuation mark resting exactly where it belongs. We are the reader, the writer, and the written, all at once. When we remember something, we're not just summoning an image from the past. We're touching a letter, a trace of ink on the universe's page. Every memory is a stroke of ink, every moment a sentence etched onto the thin paper of space-time. When that page turns backward, the words remain, only flipped in the reader's gaze. The story isn't lost, it just changes direction. In that kind of world, we no longer stand between past and future. We become the observer of the whole book, seeing every chapter coexist. Some tell of childhood, some of love, some close with farewell. But none of them ever truly end. They only rest, waiting for us to read them again, from a different state of heart. Time, through this lens, is like the breath of the one writing the diary. Each breath a small story, a whispered thought pressed into paper. Then the writer quietly rereads their own lines, feeling each letter pulse like a heartbeat. Maybe the universe is the same, not a cold machine running on laws, but a story aware of itself being told. Seen this way, memory can never vanish. It only shifts, changes place, changes view. When time flows forward, we read from start to finish. When it reverses, we read from end to beginning. But whichever way we read, the meaning remains. And I Miss You, read backward, still holds the warmth of you. Reversal can't erase emotion, it only changes how we touch it. Sometimes, in half-forgotten dreams, we hear a strange sound, like someone calling our name from very far away. Maybe it isn't a voice from the past or the future, but a whisper from ourselves, on the other side of time. Another self, reading this same book in reverse, brushing against the line where two worlds meet. In that instant, the two of us meet in a single comma, then drift apart again. If time could reverse, memories wouldn't disappear. They'd become replies from the far side, where all we forget is remembered by someone else, where all we leave behind is gathered by another self. Like two people writing in the same diary, one writing forward, the other backward, until their words meet in the middle, merge, and fade into a spotless white. Maybe that's the center of time, where there is no before or after, only pure presence. There, we no longer need memory because there's nothing to remember, nothing to forget. Only one long, unbroken breath, dissolving gently into the void. Once we understand this, the feeling of passing disappears too. Each second stops being a step toward loss and becomes a pulse in sync with the universe's breath. Maybe we're still dreaming our own dream, one where every beginning is an ending and every farewell is a return. In that flow, we are the writer, the page, and the ink. When the cosmic hand presses down, we exist. When it lifts, we dissolve. But the act of writing remains, suspended in stillness, directionless, timeless. Perhaps what we call consciousness is simply the act of reading this diary. Each waking moment is a line we've just read, each sleep the page closing. Then we open our eyes, read on, believing it's a new day, when in truth, we're just reading the same story again, under the light of a different morning. When time reverses, we simply read the lines backward. It feels different, yet the story stays the same. Maybe that's why sometimes, for the briefest instant, we feel a strange déjà vu, a fleeting echo of something turning the other way. A smile, a gust of wind, a glance, and suddenly our heart aches, as if recognizing something it can't name. Maybe it's a memory echoing from the far side of the page. If so, then no loss is ever permanent. Everything that once was is still recorded somewhere on the endless sheet of the universe. When we leave the current page, another continues to read. When we close our eyes, the page merely rests, waiting to be opened again, maybe by someone else, maybe by us returning from the start. There's a quiet peace in that thought, because once we know that nothing is lost, we stop clinging. We stop chasing time as if it's running away from us. Instead, we let each line appear and close on its own. Because everything that needs to be written has already been written. Everything that must be remembered has already been remembered. Somewhere, in the stillness of the cosmos, when we close the book, the current still flows. No more words, only the breath of meaning. It feels like standing before a night sea, watching waves fade, knowing they're still there. Everything is simply returning to its origin, the place where the story began and never truly ended. Perhaps there, we are no longer the ones writing. We become the current itself. No more separation between writer and page, reader and story. Only one thing remains: existence. Soft, dim, like the wisp of smoke from a candle just gone out. And in that faint smoke, we hear a whisper, so quiet it feels like it comes from the far edge of time. It says, "Every memory is still here, neither moving forward nor backward, simply breathing with you." As the whisper fades, we close our eyes, letting the flow carry us back to where it all began. There is no ending, only return. A perfect circle, gentle as the final breath before sleep. Everything we've passed through, from the first speck of dust to the last dream, are just pages in a book without a cover. Time is no longer a river, but a still lake, where every ripple is a moment we call now. And each trembling of memory draws us back into a familiar circle, where past and future are only two ends of the same breath. We begin with the question, what is time? And end where the question dissolves into the one who asked it. Time, memory, soul, all just different ways of touching the same thing, pure existence. Perhaps there is no forward, no backward, only awareness gazing at itself. When that truth sinks in, the fear of loss fades too. Nothing disappears. It only changes form, changes direction, like a butterfly turning in the light. Every ending isn't a door closing, but the universe inhaling, preparing to breathe out the next chapter of the same story. Then we realize we never left the beginning. We've only been drifting within our own embrace, inside the slow heartbeat of a dreaming universe. And in that dream, we whisper to ourselves, a good night to all of time. We have never vanished, only rested a while in the dream of eternity.